The Pittsburgh Pirates have been in the market for a corner outfielder all season. Now, do they just go ahead and say, chuck it?
You are Locked On Pirates, your daily Pittsburgh Pirates podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome back, everybody, to the Locked On Pirates podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network. My name is Ethan Smith, your host of the Locked On Pirates podcast since 2020, bringing you all of your news, analysis, opinions, and reactions to everything going on in the world of the Pittsburgh Pirates from a lifelong fan to lifelong fans just like you. Today's episode of Locked On Pirates, of course, is brought to you by the wonderful people over at Game Time. If you're looking for tickets to a comedy show, a basketball game, baseball games in the future, even an NFL playoff game this weekend, make sure you go to Game Time right now and tell them that Locked On sent you to get $20 off your first purchase over at Game Time. The Pittsburgh Pirates are finally, it feels like, kind of starting to get in the market for some things. And we're finally starting to get some real rumors about how they are navigating this middle part of the offseason, kind of the dog days of winter, I guess. You know, you get the dog days of summer. This is kind of the dog days of winter now. You have 42 days until spring training games are officially beginning. Pitchers and catchers report next month. So a lot of teams trying to fine-tune their rosters before they get to spring training, trying to figure out what needs they have, where they can fulfill them with free agents or trades. And the Pirates, of course, and I've slammed this on this show, absolutely need corner outfield help. We discussed it the other day a little bit when I talked about Alex Verdugo on the expectations show that we did on Tuesday. We're going to talk about those same expectations in the final part of today's show and what happens if the Pirates don't meet those expectations. But Verdugo was the first name that popped up that the Pirates are reportedly interested in. Robert Murray was all over that. But now Mark Feinsand has thrown out another name that the Pirates could very much be interested in. And it's a name that I think intrigues a lot of people, and especially the organization. And it's Randal Grichuk, folks. And Randal Grichuk is definitely an interesting player for the Pirates to be targeting here, because to me, there's a lot of layers to this. But before we get to those layers, I want to just kind of outline the player that Randal Grichuk is, what he could bring to this team, and then we'll talk about the fit. So with Grichuk, you are looking at a guy that's 33 years old, so that might be a massive turnoff to a lot of fans that the age is, again, just an older guy. So you're not thinking of Randal Grichuk as like this guy that's going to be here for 3 or 4 or 5 years. He's going to be a stopgap, which could be fine. It just really depends on what kind of Randal Grichuk you're getting here. But you look at what he did last year for the Diamondbacks, and it was very interesting because when he signed with Arizona, he was coming off of a somewhat down year, only signed for $2 million, but man, he had a very good 2024 campaign for that Diamondbacks team that just narrowly missed the postseason. Grichuk, again, $2 million, but he was at a short side platoon all year. He wasn't really their everyday guy. I mean, you look at the guys that they have out there, like Corbin Carroll, for instance, you weren't really expecting Grichuk to be the guy every day, but he still got 279 plate appearances last year and slashed 291, 348, and 528 with a 139 WRC plus and 12 bombs. Folks, you hear those numbers and you probably just shifted your whole mindset to say, oh yeah, we need that guy. And I have mentioned Randal Grichuk a couple of times on the show. I have brought him up as a potential option for this team. I just didn't really know what his market was going to be. I don't really even know it now. I don't know how much it's going to cost Pittsburgh. I don't know really how much the interest is there. But you're looking at a right-handed hitting outfielder that you're obviously going to be using as a somewhat of a platoon bat in some capacity at this point in his career. He's always been very, very, very good against lefties. Very good. Now, that goes against what I've been saying about the Pittsburgh Pirates all offseason, that they absolutely need to improve against right-handed pitching. But if you can come in and get a guy like Randal Grichuk, who's just going to flat out hit for you against left-handed pitching, you absolutely do it. His career split for Southpaws, 319, 386, 528 last year with a 159 WRC plus against left-handed pitching with a career slash line, folks, against left-handers at 273, 324, 509 with a 121 WRC plus. So if you were looking at Randal Grichuk just in the microscope of being a very good player against left-handed pitching, you absolutely love this type of move for the Pittsburgh Pirates because you can slot him in the corner outfield when lefties are pitching. He can play pretty much average defense. I mean, last season he had a negative 2 outs above average, but anything that's less than 5 in that outs above average category to me is average defense. Once you get above 5 or below 5, that's where I start to say you're either below average or above average. But the right-handed stuff is interesting because he only faced right-handers 95 times last year. So the Diamondbacks were very hesitant to let him really face right-handed pitching at all. And he slashed 242, 274, and 527 with a 116 WRC plus. So still very respectable numbers respectful numbers for Randal Grichuk there. And you look at his career line, it's obviously not what you would like against get against lefties. 242, 288, 449. The WRC plus is a 93. So very clearly, I think the plan would be if the Pirates do indeed do this. Now, I do want to add, none of this is set in stone. They are not in any absolution getting Randal Grichuk at all. It's just being reported that they are very interested. So we can assume that there has been some kind of dialogue there and that a move could be impending. We just obviously, we don't really know just yet. But very clearly, if you're bringing in Randal Grichuk, he's going to be in some kind of platoon fashion. That's what he's going to be. He's going to be a left-handed hitting killer. He's going to be mostly okay against right-handed pitching. And yeah, there is some very worrisome career stuff where you wonder, okay, was last year kind of an outlier? Does he come back down to earth? I mean, when you look at his StatCast page last year, his expected slugging was a 483. His expected batting average was a 278. The average exit velocity was 90.6, 11% barrel rate, 47.6 hard hit rate. So if he would have been qualified, he didn't qualify, but if he would have been qualified, he would have had a 13 batting run value and would have been read everywhere on StatCast, which is very good. You worry about the chase rate a little bit, 28.6 last year, but on top of that, he was very good with his whiff rate, and his K rate comes in with a 20.4 whiff percentage and a 16.5 strikeout percentage. Does not elicit a lot of walks, though. 7.2 walk percentage last season. You kind of worry about that. But again, I want to go back to that 2023 campaign where he obviously was not the same player that he was last year. And that's where I think a lot of this can get scary with Randal Grichuk. This is kind of like the downside of it before we get into the fit. He was 15th percentile in 2023 in chase rate, 21st in walk rate, 60th in K rate, and 41st in whiff rate. Now, the expected batting average was high again. The slugging, not so much. The barrel rates were not high either, but his hard hit percentage was still up there in the 76th percentile. But he was a -6 batting run value player in 2023. You go back to 2022, he was a +6. You go to 2021, he was a -3. So you're starting to kind of see that every other year, and we'll skip over to 2019 where he was a -9. Every other year, it kind of just feels like Randal Grichuk is almost a different player. And throughout his career, that's just who he's been. He's going to absolutely demolish left-handed pitching. But on the same coin, he is going to struggle against righties, which is something with the Pittsburgh Pirates that we've come very accustomed to with all of these left-handed hitters that they have. Like now Spencer Horwitz is going to struggle again, hopefully have success against these right-handers. And I meant to say right-handed hitters, but you've seen Nick Gonzalez have struggles with it. You've seen Henry Davis have struggles with it. You've seen even O'Neal Cruz early on just having trouble against right-handed pitchers, and O'Neal being a lefty, obviously. So yeah, he doesn't check the box of helping you much against right-handed pitching. But again, if you're getting the 2024 version of Randal Grichuk in a purely platoon role where he's going to face lefties more often than not and be a very valuable pinch hitter to you in those situations late in games, on top of being a good average defender in the outfield when you put him out there against left-handed pitching, folks, I find it hard to say that I don't like this at all, because I really do. I think that it helps this team a lot, but there are a couple of things that I want to discuss with it, because it really interests me how they think about this in a platoon role and who may be involved in that platoon. We'll discuss that in just a moment here on the Locked On Pirates podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Rocket Money. Make sure you cancel all of your unwanted subscriptions today and go to rocketmoney.com/locked-on, because did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? Folks, that happened to me. I was paying for Disney Plus on 2 different accounts, and I had a few subscriptions other than that I didn't even realize I was paying for, and Rocket Money made it so easy to track them down. It's like really having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, and monitors your spending and helps you lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions. Folks, they've saved everybody almost the amount that Juan Soto got paid by the New York Mets. So on average, they're saving members up to $740 a year when using all the app's premium features. For me, again, one of the best features is the subscription tracker. I've used it to cancel services I wasn't using anymore, and I've already saved a ton. Plus, with their goals feature, I've been able to automatically set aside money for my future. No more stressing about budgeting every month, because Rocket Money takes care of it for me. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/locked-on today. That's rocketmoney.com/locked-on. rocketmoney.com/locked-on to cancel your unwanted subscriptions today. And welcome back, everybody, to the Locked On Pirates podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network. After listening to this show, make sure you listen to Locked On MLB with Paul Francis Sullivan, as he brings you all of everything you need to know about baseball's offseason over on our flagship show, Locked On MLB. Gotta love Sully. Make sure you go show him some love. So we talked about Randal Grichuk, the player. We talked about what kind of player he's been over the course of his career, what kind of player he'll continue to be. And it's interesting because, yeah, I mean, he's a platoon guy. And a lot of times some people might get thrown off by a platoon player. But Randal Grichuk is especially pretty good at hitting left-handed pitching, which then gets into the where does he fit question. Because if you're strictly using him in a platoon, which is what I would expect, then you start to look at the roster and you wonder, okay, who is he going to platoon with? Now, there are some candidates, obviously. I think you remove Billy Cook from that conversation, seeing as he's also a right-hander. That doesn't mean that Billy Cook still can't get looks in the outfield, maybe in left field if Brian Reynolds goes to first base, maybe even as a center fielder, but I do like Cook more as a corner outfielder. Nick York is another one that you could throw into the hat, but as far as guys that we flat out seen play the position, and I did find it interesting that when I looked this up, the Pirates had at least 8 different players play 27 or more innings in left or right field last year. So that is the position now that obviously you're looking at a guy like Grichuk to kind of fill in some of those innings. But you look at the names of the players that played that position last year. Brian De La Cruz, gone. Edward Olivares, gone. Connor Joe, gone. So then that leaves you with the group that you still have. You still have a Joshua Palacios, G1 Bay, and Jack Sawinski. That's where I'm narrowing it down, is if this is the only move. Now, in a, I would not say perfect world, but in a more ideal world, you get Randal Grichuk and Alex Verdugo, and you platoon them together. That would be great for me. I would walk away from that and be happy. If you're telling me that Randal Grichuk and Alex Verdugo are the right fielders, good with me. Good by me. I'm fine with that. But let's just, for the sake of assumption, let's say that Grichuk is the only outfielding move that they make. So if I'm saying that he's going to be a platoon option and bat right-handed, then that includes Palacios, Bay, and Sawinski. Ji-hwan Bae, I'm out. I've been out. I'm going to stay out. I don't really want to see much of Ji-hwan Bae on this roster. I think it would be a disservice to the entire roster if Ji-hwan Bae is getting consistent at-bats in right field going into this year. I think you could do a lot better than Ji-hwan Bae, and I'm out. Joshua Palacios. I don't know where I sit with him yet, because we have seen that Joshua Palacios can be a very clutch player. We've seen that Joshua Palacios can be at times a decent player. I'm not going to go and say that he's a good player, because last year in 67 at-bats, he was a negative .1 WAR player with a 224 average, and he's a career 230 average player in nearly 400 at-bats. But there is some pop there. 12 homers across 369 at-bats over a full season. Yeah, that's fine. Pirates absolutely need power. But Palacios has to be put in this conversation if Grichuk is the only outfielding move that they make. Because left-handed hitter, not the greatest defender, but right-handed pitching, you're not throwing Grichuk out there against right-handers very often. You might see it sometimes, but you're not going to see it very often, as evidenced by what the Diamondbacks did last year. Jack Sawinski, folks, I think is the one that you got to kind of put pen to paper on here, because we have seen two very different versions of Jack Sawinski. You look at the 2024 version, and it was abysmal, to say the least. He was horrible. Negative 1.7 WAR player, only 9 homers and 247 at-bats, a 182 average. But then we go and look at 2023, where he was a 2.2 WAR player, hit 26 home runs with 74 RBIs, 172 strikeouts. But guess what? That's just the kind of player that Jack Sawinski is. He is the modern-day 3 outcomes player. He's either going to hit a home run, hit a single, 4 outcomes player. Hit a single, hit a home run, walk, or strike out. That is what he's going to do. Last year, he just wasn't really hitting the baseball at all. And then he went to the minors and also struggled. But I feel like the Pirates, with how they operate, still have to do their due diligence with a guy like Jack Sawinski. And I don't see a major issue with that. I don't. Because we have seen, again, the high, which could be 25 plus home runs with Sawinski, and the low, which could be what we saw last year. Wouldn't you want to at least try and see if you could potentially get him back to that 2023 form? Wouldn't you want to see that? And I do think that his upside is higher than Palacios. It's absolutely higher than Ji-hwan Bae. And this team absolutely needs left-handed power. You were only really getting it from O'Neal Cruz consistently last year. That was it. Sawinski wasn't doing it consistently. Tellez, he showed some spurts, but he wasn't really doing it consistently. You need it. And if you could potentially, thinking in a positive world here, get Sawinski even close back to that 2023 form with a Randal Grichuk hitting against left-handers, that's a pretty nice platoon, if you ask me. Now, I would still, again, if they could get Grichuk and Verdugo, I think that's best case scenario here. Now, Willie or Abreu, I'm still holding out hope. Still holding out hope. That'd be great. I'd love it. But to me, the best case scenario as the fit goes is that Grichuk is going to be your guy against left-handed pitching. The flip side of it with the platoon is, okay, you're either adding a guy like Alex Verdugo or another left-hander somewhere, or you're sticking with Palacios and Sawinski. And there's a lot, and I mean a lot, of questions surrounding Jack Sawinski and Joshua Palacios. And in a year where you have expectations of getting better, improving from those 76 wins the last 2 years, as I said on the Tuesday show, improving by 4 series wins, which would be 8 wins, and I think could get them in the postseason. I don't know if you really want those questions, especially in a guy in Randal Grichuk who comes with questions himself. Just something to ponder and think about. And there is a world where I could see them get Verdugo and Grichuk. I really could. It's just a matter of if they do. But I do have optimism that with all this news that we've heard now and rumors about being interested in Verdugo and Grichuk, that somebody is getting added to this outfield group, which absolutely needs to happen. Absolutely does. Grichuk, to me, is a fine addition. If he gets added, great. You have a left-handed killing guy who can play some defense. Works for me. But I would still like to see a little more, and that's where I'll end that conversation, because I do think adding a guy like Randal Grichuk could help the Pirates' expectations out a bit. But we talked about him on Tuesday. What happens if the Pirates don't meet those expectations? Today's episode of Locked On Pirates is also brought to you by Game Time. Make sure you download the Game Time app and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase, because I love going to live events, whether it's sports, music, theater, or comedy. One of my favorite memories last year was, of course, going to see the Pittsburgh Pirates face off against the Chicago Cubs when Paul Skeens debuted, because the excitement and the energy, folks, was unforgettable, and I want it back in the postseason. But now, Game Time has made it easier to get tickets for your favorite events with their new feature, Game Time Picks. This feature filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Recently, I was looking for tickets to an upcoming comedy show using the Game Time app, and with Game Time Picks, I found amazing deals, and I could even see my view in the theater that the comedy show was going to be in. The super deal was also particularly impressive, offering great seats at unbeatable prices. Plus, the app's all-in pricing shows the total cost up front with no surprise fees at checkout. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off, and download Game Time today. Folks, what time is it? It's game time. And welcome, everybody, to the final part of today's episode of Locked On Pirates here on January 9th. 2025. Hopefully you guys are all staying warm and cozy with all this cold weather up here. Yeah. And also to all of our friends, if we have any listening to the show in Los Angeles and in the Los Angeles area, praying for all of you. Can't stand everything that's happened and everything I've saw. Hopefully everybody is okay. And hopefully everything lost can be replaced. That's what I hope with all of the wildfires that are going on in Los Angeles. Shout out to our firefighters and our first responders out there that are doing all the work they can with that natural disaster. With that said, I talked on Tuesday about expectations for this team. And if you listen to that show, you should go listen to it right now. But if you didn't, my expectations for this team, I would say, are pretty modest. If they make the right moves, which Grichuk would be a start, Verdugo would obviously be a start, I said, get 4 series wins better. Not even sweeps. I just said series wins. 3-game series, win 4 more. That would put them at 84 games, 84 wins. Yeah, I would like that. I think the ceiling of this team is completely flipping their record from 76 and 86 to 86 and 76 as a ceiling. meaning that everything goes right. But let's say that the expectations I'm placing on this team don't happen. They go 79-83, 80-82, or worse. They go 76-86 again, or worse than that. Changes would happen. Absolutely. Ben Cherington would likely be gone. Derek Shelton would be gone, and depending on how they get to that point, he might be gone before the season even ended. So there would be changes to the coaching staff. Player-wise, I don't think you would see as much overturn. Skeens obviously would still be here. Jared Jones, who again was involved in potential trade talks with the Red Sox at winter meetings, is still here and would be here if he's still here. You have Bubba Chandler, O'Neal Cruz, Brian Reynolds. There wouldn't be much player turnover if the expectations weren't met. Now, I do think that those expectations not being met would obviously play in large part to the fact that players are not getting better, like a Jack Sawinski, who we mentioned earlier, like a Henry Davis, like Nick Gonzalez potentially taking a step back. Maybe Termar Johnson comes up and isn't the player we think it is. Maybe Bubba Chandler comes up and isn't the player we think it is. Maybe Bailey Falter takes a step back. There's a lot that can go into this. Maybe the bullpen ends up just not getting better. But if they don't meet expectations, I also think this fan base is just going to become completely lost. And I say that as a diehard fan. If the Pirates go into this year and don't, meet the expectations that I'm putting on them, if they get close, like if they go 82-80 and miss the postseason, I'll just tell you now, I'll probably walk out of the season and feel okay. I won't feel happy. I won't feel mad. I'll just be okay. If they go 86-76 and win the division, obviously you're going to be happy. If they get in the playoffs, obviously they're going to be happy. But if another losing season, and I'm even talking 80-82, comes our way in 2025, which you guys all think I'm the eternal optimist, it's possible. I mean, it could very well happen that this team has another below 500 season. It's just going to get real hard, man, to think that they can break through that wall, because that's where they are right now. That's the kind of team this is. They are a team that is looking to break through that wall. They went 76-86 the last 2 years. That is an indictment on saying they're a bad team. They're not horrible. They were competitive in those years, but they haven't been able to burst through that wall and really become a competitor. That's what I think us as fans really want to see in 2025. If they go 84-78 and miss the postseason, it happens. I mean, look at the Atlanta Braves and the Arizona Diamondbacks this past year. It happens. But at least you would walk out of that season and you would feel a lot better about things if they have a winning record and compete into the final weeks of September than if they just come out this year again and have another losing season. If they have another losing season and expectations aren't met, folks, Shelton's gone and Cherington's gone. They both are. You at this time next year, I'd be talking about a new general manager and a new manager. I mean, I'd be talking about a complete overhaul, probably, of the coaching staff. Oscar Marin, see ya. All of them would be gone. And you'd be kind of starting from square one again, but square one in that case would be a lot better than the square one we saw when I first started the show in 2020. So here's to hoping that they do meet expectations, because if they don't, people are going to lose their jobs. Period. And I think that's a great stopping point for today's episode, January 9th, 2025. Folks, thank you so much for tuning into the Locked On Pirates podcast, as you always do here on the Locked On Podcast Network. My name is Ethan Smith. Find me on social media at MVP_Ethan or at Locked On Pirates. You can find this show on YouTube and all of your audio platforms, because it is FREE, free, and available for you on all those platforms. Like, subscribe, comment, share it with your friends, because we're talking about the Pirates all throughout the offseason, going into when pitchers and catchers report next month, and, of course, spring training. Folks, love you. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you on the flip side.